Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole. This is another one of our weekly chats about what's going on in Congress. This week was a classic week of a lot of motion, but not much movement that matters for the American people. The motion came because the Democratic majority, honestly, is just desperate to appear like it's doing something when every poll they see suggests that the president's ratings are low, their ratings are low, and they're headed toward a difficult election. And that's because they've either left many problems unaddressed or have had the wrong solutions to real problems. And that's what we saw this week. We had no question that the absence of baby formula on shelves in supermarkets all across the country is a real problem. And it's a problem this administration literally knew about last year. Unfortunately, nobody did anything about it. The Federal Drug Administration did not act. We had a bad actor in terms of one of the companies producing over half the baby formula used in the United States. And so all of a sudden we have shortages that really are serious and that frankly we've had some infants hospitalized because of inability to get the right kind of formula. And it's particularly difficult for families in the lower income areas. So it's a real problem. So what do we do? We do what we do in Washington all the time. We throw money at the problem. There was a bill to give the Federal Drug Administration an additional $28 million. Frankly, that wouldn't begin to solve the problem, but the bill itself was incredibly defective. It had no timeline on how the money was to be spent, no subject areas on how it was to be spent. We're just turning over more money to the very agency whose responsibility was to make sure this didn't happen, something they failed at spectacularly. So this became a partisan vote, but the speaker was desperate to make sure that her members had something they could point to when they went home and had to answer for the inactions of the Biden administration, its inability to deal with a problem that it knew months ago by its own admission was coming. Second, we had a really outrageous bill on gas price gouging. Now, anybody that goes and fills up their cars knows that gas at the pump is a problem. I mean, the price has just spiraled out of control. But it's not because the companies have been gouging prices. It's because the federal government has pursued policies that have made the production of oil and gas more difficult. Remember, it was President Biden, when he was actually running for the presidency, that said he intended to declare war on the fossil fuel industry. And to be honest, he did from day one. He managed to shut down the Keystone Pipeline, which would have brought us 800,000 barrels a day. He limited leasing, exploration, and production on federal lands. They've refused to license additional acreage. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, the administration took 1 million acres in Alaska out of leasing and doubled down on no additional drilling offshore. Both these things will inevitably push prices higher in the months ahead. So, when you've got this problem that was getting worse and worse, literally almost month by month in this administration, and then have the catastrophe of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which took Russian production off the global market, or at least limited it in terms of its availability not only to us but to Europe, you're going to see price hikes. And this is, again, I think largely attributable to the failed policies of the Biden administration. But Speaker Pelosi, again, wants her members to have something to point to, so now they can go home and say they passed a bill through the House against price gouging from the evil oil and gas companies. Those people, by the way, are the ones that had a very difficult decade. They're the ones that work hard, that made us energy independent, that moved America in 2006. We were the number 3 producer in the world. We are now the largest producer in the world, and producing more than double the amount of petroleum that we were producing, again, in the middle or the early part of the first decade of this century. So, throwing rocks at the people that are actually trying to solve the problem is not a way to actually get the American people the lower gasoline prices they need. This is just simply an act where Democrats try to find somebody to scapegoat, somebody to blame, and rather than look in the mirror and accept responsibility for the policies that this Democratic majority and that the president have pursued, and they've resulted in disaster. Now, for most Americans, messaging bills don't mean very much. What really matters is what they see in their everyday lives. Every day this week, the price of gasoline set a new record. Every single day. And just about every day this week, if you're worried about your 401k, your retirement, your future, the stock market went down. That's exactly what the policies of this administration have produced. And we are in a very rocky economic patch right now, but most of the problem are attributable to bad policies and bungled administration by the Biden administration, and frankly, I would say a Congress, a Democratic majority that spent like drunken sailors, except that's not fair to drunken sailors. They actually spend their own money. This has been people spending us into oblivion and into further debt, and it's just outrageous. And again, all these chickens are coming home to roost. So that's something to think about. And so it's been a difficult week. I wish I could tell you we'd done things that were more productive. And in some areas, you see the Appropriations Committee, which I'm proud to be a member of, working away on hearings, serious hearings, and moving toward bills. So hopefully we can get the government funded sometime in the fall for the following year. That's progress of a sort. But most of the legislative activity that you're seeing now has more to do with people trying to have an excuse or some cover in the upcoming November elections. And frankly, I don't think anyone is going to have any cover that's been associated with this Democratic majority, because its policies, quite frankly, have not worked for the American people. I'll look forward to visiting with you. I might not visit with you next week. I'm not sure, because Congress will take 2 weeks off. But I'll be in the district and available, and we'll actually do some remote hearings that will undoubtedly be on C-SPAN, so there'll still continue to be congressional activity. So I hope you and your family have a wonderful Memorial weekend coming up in the not too distant future, and I look forward to our next visit.